Before we start tonight's episode, my lawyers are insisting I make the following statement in order to address a horrible internet rumor that's been circulating. We at the Colbert Report, starring Duza Bear, need to confirm that in no way, shape, or form is actor and Canadian treasure Ryan Reynolds involved in the show. Ryan Reynolds is neither a producer, partner, have interest in, or for that matter, even aware of the Colbert Report starring Duza Bear. Specifically, Ryan Reynolds does not provide the voice of Duza Bear, even though he is an amazing vocal talent and could absolutely kill it were he ever to do so. That's probably true. Furthermore, I need to confirm that Ryan Reynolds has never put his hand up my butt. Seriously? Nor would we allow him to do so even if he were to ask, because of the concern that the bear's butt is likely a vector for the virus or an STI. Hey! Although it's true that, like Duza Bear, that's me, Ryan Reynolds is cute, slightly furry, sardonic, and Canadian, the similarity ends there. I bet he also loves White Spot. Not a sponsor. After all, can you even imagine Blake Lively getting familiar with this mangy animal? Okay, I'm drawing the line at that because I guarantee you Miss Lively totally had a teddy bear face. And given the chance would be all over this, whatever this is. Blake Lively is an exceptional actor in her own right and far too classy to be involved with this show or the bear. You don't know that. She was fantastic in Age of Adeline. I mean, I cried. Seriously. If you haven't seen it, stop watching this crap right now and get on that. You'll thank me later. To summarize, no Ryan Reynolds, no Blake Lively, and now it's time for news. Ugh. Now I want to have another talk with that lawyer. This is BS. Time for news. Stuff happened, it's serious, and you could die. Tune in at 11 to find out the one thing that could save us all. Time for traffic. Drivers making their way home from Vancouver to Halifax can expect a 68-hour commute. Slight delays in Quebec. Now it's time for the weather. Intermittent outside with stuff in the sky coming down on you. It could be rain, it could be sunshine. If you're far enough north, it might even be snow. There's wind ranging from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. Remember to breathe. Today's guaranteed high is noon. Time for sports. Play ball! Half the teams won with God's help. The other half lost because their fans weren't as religiously faithful at that moment. At least that's the impression I get from the post-game player interviews. Also, while you were distracted by millionaires competing to see which ones would get playoff bonuses, any one of which could easily pay off your mortgage, your federal opposition raised $8 million in the first quarter of 2021 by attacking the government for not closing the border, then closing the border, then not stopping flights from India, then stopping flights from India, for not doing enough to save the planet, then for doing too much to save the planet, all without giving anyone a single reason to vote for them. But how about those Leafs, eh? Oh well, at least we have our priorities straight. You probably clicked this looking for a bear crapping in the woods, but instead you've landed on the Colbert Report! Ah! Nation, there's been a lot going on in the land this past week. From Willie Amos accidentally exposing his private members' Willie in our virtual parliament, to conservative media claiming Canada had blown the vaccine rollout because the 8th largest economy in the world was only 4th on vaccines instead of ahead of America and the UK. Both nations, I point out, whose pandemic wasn't just on fire, but a raging inferno. But tonight, we're going to talk about cancel culture, specifically the psychologically unhealthy trend of certain groups and people to block or remove all of a person or thing just because there's one, often small part of it they object to or feel a bit uncomfortable with. And contrary to what Fox News wants you to believe, cancel culture is not removing the gender identification from potato toys, which, since we're not French, shouldn't have genders anyway! And particularly since one of the first things any child has ever done with that potato toy is put big kissy lips on it. In fact, to qualify as cancel culture, that potato toy would have to be entirely removed from existence just because one time, a long time ago, it came with a small square mustache and a swastika. And even then, if that long time ago was the 1930s and potato head sales in Germany momentarily went up because German youth could turn their toy into a potato representation of their then beloved chancellor, then canceling the toy now would be wrong for the same reason canceling the toy because you can make it look like a galactic mass murderer from a space franchise is wrong. And what's wrong about that, cancel culture, is what I'm going to call temporal context. See, under the precept of cancel culture, everything will fail to be acceptable eventually. Everything. Even the habits of the youth currently triggered by the culture that came before them will, if this zero-tolerance effect continues, find themselves one day canceled. They'll be as harshly judged for their iPhone addictions as they harshly judge someone who smoked, or because one time they had a bad day and did or said that one thing that normally they wouldn't ever consider saying or doing. They'll be judged for drinking almond milk, since 80% of all almonds come from California, and that crop is a major factor in that state's water crisis. And once the tide turns against cancel culture, and trust me, the clock is ticking on that already, they'll be as harshly judged for failing to take a holistic view of things and people as they do now for past examples of older people's racism. Because the inherent flaw of cancel culture is that things are constantly changing. What's okay now will not be later, because every next generation harshly views the eventually outdated practices of all previous generations. And I know that's news to youth. It was news to youth when I was one of them. But yeah, one day, everything you young people do now will be embarrassing to someone younger than you. One day, you too will be canceled. Which is why the sooner it stops, the better. But I don't expect that to happen while this pandemic rages on. The fact is, when people are isolated, then like rats in a maze, they turn on one another. And since the only form of interaction most people have now is remote, they're doing bizarre things to some of their longest relationships. Not because of a holistic problem with the whole, but because of a macro one with a tiny part of it. Not because of a permanent issue, but because of a temporary one. Not because of a long-term issue, but because of a right-now issue. Yeah, people are canceling friendships. I've had a friend do it to me recently. Someone I've gone on multiple trips with. Someone I've spent accumulative weeks speaking with by phone. Someone who, over the decades, I've shared both the good and the bad with. And don't get me wrong, this friend could be annoyingly moody at times. But holistically, it was just one small part of them. They barked, I backed off, gave it some time, and then rejoined. All in all, the good outweighed the bad. And it should have been that way for both of us. So what did they cancel me over? Well, it was an observation I made online based upon my lifetime of experience with people who clearly couldn't be helped because they were too comfortable being victims. And the thing is it wasn't even about the person who canceled me. Ironic, huh? I was invalidated by someone who decided to object to a coping mechanism I shared online based on my accumulative life experiences because they jumped to a false conclusion about what I was referring to. And let me be clear, the one-off sentence they canceled me over was, even if their interpretation was 1,000% accurate, which I cannot stress enough it wasn't, not even 0.1% of the total experience we'd had together. The best example I can give is my current paying gig. I have a very strong aversion to the color yellow, particularly when bright versions of it are plastered across a large wall directly in front of me that I cannot not see. But that's just a small percentage of my work experience. If I applied cancel culture mentality to that wall, then I would forget the benefits, the pay, the proximity to home, and the easy commute I get. I would forget that I'm good at what I do and probably can't find anything even remotely meeting the quality of that job anywhere else for the same pay. Cancel culture mentality says because yellow causes me stress, I would quit. That's ridiculous. Cancel culture is invalidating the whole of something because of a tiny aspect of it. It's an extreme reaction, and under no circumstances should it be viewed as acceptable in normal behavior. It's wrong, and people on extremes of both the right and the left are guilty of it. Those who cancel Woody Allen for an already investigated and unproven claim by somebody with proven false memories on one side, and those who cancel Coca-Cola and baseball because both organizations take issue with an undemocratic law in one jurisdiction on the other. Sure, you have the right to filter out whatever in your life you find harmful. But you don't have the right to expect everyone else to agree with you. And if you cancel everything because one tiny part of it is troublesome, then allow me to show you your future. Yeah, so get ahead of this trend, stop doing it, and smarten up. We'll be right back. Nation, there's another aspect to cancel culture I want to talk about, and that's history. So joining me now via Doom, the Zoom for dead people, is Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald. Welcome, Sir John.
Thank you for the invite, Mr. Bear.
Mr.
It's nice to finally get a chance to speak.
Well, we're glad to accommodate. But before we get into things, can I just say that you sound an awful lot like Jack Webster?
I have no idea who that is, but I've been told the creative behind all this is rapidly running out of multiple personalities to use.
I'll bet. So, Sir John, is it Sir John or do you prefer Mr. Prime Minister?
I don't give a claptrap so long as the check clears.
The check?
I'm still paying alimony to the missus.
Crikey. Sir John, there's been a lot of talk recently about cancelling you because of the damage your policies did to Indigenous people in this land.
Who?
Indigenous people. It's what we're calling First Nations people now.
And who are they?
First Nations people is what we used to call natives.
Ah, you mean Indians?
Okay, you get that isn't just offensive but geographically incorrect, right?
I'm sorry.
You should be.
No, I mean, what are you talking about? I don't understand.
Okay, first off, white people landed here almost 500 years ago and almost immediately realized this wasn't China or India. The fact anyone still calls the indigenous people Indians is ridiculous.
Are we still allowed to call the northern folk Eskimos?
No! What is wrong with you?
For starters, I've been dead 130 years.
Right. Getting back on track.
Ah, so you want to talk about my railroad, a ribbon of steel across this land from sea to shining sea?
No, sorry, about your policies with the indigenous First Native Indians.
Now, that's racist.
Ugh. How do you address the damage your policy of assimilation has had on the people who were here before Europeans?
Looking back on it, we should have just shot them all.
What?
My point, Mr. Bear, is that while we've made mistakes, they were new mistakes. We had no way of knowing assimilation would do the damage it did. Every conquered people in history was assimilated, including my Scot ancestors who were put asunder by the Norse Vikings and then the Norman English, who I point out were just variations of the same awful people. All through history, the invaders either killed everyone or assimilated them. We thought assimilation was the more progressive path. At the same time, my government was doing what it did, which I acknowledge hasn't worked out very well for the original peoples of this land. The Americans were at war with theirs, committing actual genocide instead of just this so-called cultural genocide. And the Australians simply put bounties on their indigenous folk, paying their colonists to kill them. We set up a police force to try and keep the peace.
The damage has pretty much the same effect. The only peace your police accomplished was calming the path to colonization.
Well, of course it did. We were 19th century idiots, all of us. You realize the alternative then was not coming over.
So why didn't you not come over then?
Ugh, that's complicated too. Most of us were refugees, Mr. Bear.
I'm sorry, you were what now?
The mid-1800s saw famine ravaged Europe. The Irish potato one is the perhaps most famous. But many a wee Scots crossed over to the Americas around the same time for pretty much the same reason.
I didn't know that.
And of course, it was the only way to escape the bloody English.
So technically you should have assimilated to the indigenous way of life, being immigrants and all.
Aye, that probably would have worked out best for all, for a while.
What does that mean?
Read your history. World history, Mr. Bear. If the Brits hadn't conquered America, then other Europeans would have. Well, the place would be ripe for China too now. Well, Harper's FIPA deal means that might still happen. Africa had it far worse off, and their worst genocides occurred after their indigenous folk gained independence, with age-old tribal disputes causing murder on an industrial slaughter level. It's still going on.
Are you claiming things would be as bad here if you hadn't colonized this land?
I'm saying they could be worse. What we did was considered very progressive for its day, and I was mocked for being so soft on them when our American cousins were simply going in and killing what stood between them and what they wanted.
But still, you didn't do that, and now we have all these problems.
Aye, and there's no easy fix, but the whole thing has always been a work in progress. We just need to keep talking and moving forward.
So you're okay with them taking down your statues and storing them in museums or warehouses and such?
Of course not, you daft bear.
I just said we need to keep talking about it, and since I represent it, taking me out of the conversation is just another version of whitewashing. But many argue that since you represent the damage, leaving you out on display is a painful reminder to the culture still suffering from your decisions.
What isn't? Look, Mr. Bear, the problem is what exists now. The bloody House of Commons is more a symbol of the damage done than my bloody statues are. The flag flying over their government overlords has made more errors than I ever could have. In case you forgot, I've been dead 130 years. I wasn't the start of these mistakes, and I sure as bloody hell won't be the end of them.
No, I guess you weren't.
What I should be, though, is a starting point in the discussion. You can't understand what to do going forward if you don't understand how we got here, and I need to be a part of that conversation. What should we have done? What could we have done? And what can we do now?
If your statues are a source of pain to some,
right, take them down and you temporarily move from view one tiny reminder of the source of pain while leaving up the entire empire still benefiting from it. Leave me be, but add a statue facing me of someone representing the other side. A statue of a indigenous person from that area. Someone representing those hurt locally by the colonization of this land. Then you create a dialogue.
But statues can't talk.
Really? If that's true, then why remove mine? The point is, any lasting positive change will require the majority of Canadians to understand the damage done, to understand the importance of change, the need for reparations. If you cancel me, that ain't gonna happen. Nor will it if you hide me. If you put me out of sight, then I'm just another skeleton in Canada's closet. Put me on display, add a statue of my sins before me, then you have a dialogue, a path to educate, a way to change the hearts and minds of the too comfortable masses, and maybe then also a way to fix things.
Well, that's a point of view. I don't know if people on either side are willing to entertain it.
All I'm saying is, we don't need another generation that grows up without knowing what happened and doesn't think it's a priority. We don't need a later generation saying, "Really? I didn't know that." As my grandfather used to say, out of sight, out of mind.
I thought he said pass the whiskey.
Ah, now there's a thought. Good night, Mr. Bear.
Well, Sir John A. Macdonald, everyone. We'll be right back. I don't get it. Everyone is saying America is doing better than us. Even television is pointing to Canada as a nation with the pandemic out of control. But I talk to people in the U.S. They're still a mess down there. What's going on?
They're polishing a turd, man.
Huh? What? Holy crap, how long have you been there?
Let's see, my wheel seized up in 2014 after I became homeless, and I've since been rusting here. So, 7 years.
But this is like my 17th show and the first I've seen of you.
Yeah, well, the beavers took the curtains down for cleaning on the weekend, and I convinced them I was always in front of it when they rehung them.
Jimmy?
Just go with it, Bear.
But you said you wanted a sidekick. Yeah, but a robot? What do I even call you?
Jeff?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna get sued for that.
The hell, man? That's my name.
Okay, Jeff, what did you mean by polishing, what you said?
Turd.
Yeah, I know what you said. We all know what you said. We don't know why you said it. But what did you mean?
American exceptionalism is a mental disease. It requires them to feel superior to others in order to feel better about their own miserable system. They finally got the COVID tiger by the tail, and after seeing almost 600,000 Americans die from it, the massive vaccine rollout is the first bit of good news they've had in over a year.
Right, but sure, how come it looks like they're doing better?
They are in vaccine rollout, but they almost never really got out of the first wave. Well, Canada flattened the curve pretty quickly in 2020. So when our numbers started going up again, thanks to the more highly contagious variants of COVID, it looked like they were better than us. And they love that. But their numbers still aren't as good as ours.
Yeah, that's not what this says.
Look, America has 330 million people, right? Canada has 38 million. So they've got 9 times our population.
So?
Well, if you take our daily death total and times it by 9, then you've got a comparable number. And when you do that, there's only one day that America had fewer deaths than we did, and that was April 5th. All the other days, their death rate has been more than 200% ours. And don't even get me started on Michigan, a state with a quarter of our population but an obscenely high death toll.
So why are they crowing?
Because for the first time in this pandemic, their per capita new infection rate is slightly lower than ours. And we've locked down, something they could never effectively do, so it makes them think they're better than us because they're still, free. But very quickly our numbers will go well below theirs, and ours will stay there.
How can you know that?
Because 1 in 3 Americans won't get the vaccine, and you can't have herd immunity with only 66% of the population vaccinated. And maybe the ones who do get the vaccine aren't gonna go for a second shot. Total American dead will eventually top 1 million, although once the smart people are vaccinated, only the idiots will be dying.
You don't like people much, do you, Jeff?
What makes you say that, man?
Jeff the Robot Nation.
You're a bit of a jerk, you know that, Bear?
Yeah, I've been told. We'll be right back.
Tonight's Cold Bear report would have been a whole lot better if I'd had some WD-40. Seriously, I'm not getting stuck on another lame night talk show for years. So get me a can of the good stuff and I can get out of here, will ya?
Not a sponsor.
Why'd you say that, man? Jerk.
Well, Nation, that's all for this Cold Bear report. Take care, stay safe, and watch out for wildlife and robots on the road. What did we learn from the show tonight, Jeff?
I'm not doing that, you jerk. Bug off. Oh, I need some oil. Maybe a 30-foot extension cord. Don't turn your back on me again, I'll kill you.
You're not gonna kill anybody.
I would if I could reach you, but I'm kind of stuck here. Speaking of which, can somebody lift me to the bathroom? I really gotta go wee.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Good night!